Dear, life has a funny way of teaching you lessons when you least expect them. I've seen many things in my time, and there's one story that stayed with me, a story about my granddaughter Claire. I remember her as a young woman full of hope, her eyes shining with dreams too big for the little town we lived in. But life has a way of testing even the strongest hearts. Claire married Mark, a charming man who could make you believe anything with just a smile. Oh, how she adored him. I remember watching her from the kitchen window as she left for her first day at the office, her hair perfectly styled, her lunch packed with love. She was determined to build a life, a family, a home filled with laughter and warmth. And for a while it seemed perfect. Their daughter, Sophie, was born on a sunny afternoon in May. I held her in my arms and whispered a blessing, a prayer for happiness that I now wish I had known to make stronger, because happiness isn't always forever. Claire worked harder than anyone I've ever known. 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to make sure Sophie had everything she needed, and to give Mark the chance to climb that corporate ladder he always dreamed about. "Soon, Mom," he'd say when I complained about how tired Claire looked. "Soon we'll travel, we'll breathe, we'll have it all." And Claire believed him. Oh, how she believed him. I watched her sacrifice herself, her own dreams tucked away like old letters in a drawer. I watched her pour every ounce of love into her family, and for a while, it felt like it was enough. But life isn't always fair, my dear. It wasn't enough. By the time Sophie was 16, things had changed. That little girl who used to hold sparklers like she could light up the world? Gone. Replaced by a teenager who barely looked at her mother, who lived in a world of screens and secrets. And Mark, well, he was still there, but not really. He had become a stranger with a familiar face. One rainy evening, I found Claire sitting by the window, staring at a photograph of the 3 of them from happier times. The rain tapped against the glass like it was keeping time with her aching heart. "Grandma," she whispered, though she wasn't really speaking to me. "What happened to us?" I wanted to hug her, to tell her that some questions don't have easy answers. That sometimes the ones you love the most, they hurt you without meaning to. But mostly I wanted to warn her. Life has twists you can't see coming, and sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who betray you the deepest. And so, my dear, this is where Claire's story begins. Not with happiness, not with love, but with a question that would haunt her for years. What do you do when the life you built starts to crumble, and the people you sacrificed everything for turn into strangers? Now, listen closely, dear, because this is where the story takes a turn that no one saw coming. Not even Claire herself. You see, sometimes life doesn't announce its betrayals with a warning. It sneaks in quietly, like a shadow crossing the floor. Claire had started noticing little things, tiny cracks in the life she thought was unshakable. Mark, her husband, who had once been so attentive, now disappeared for hours without explanation. He said it was work, meetings, conferences, late nights, but something in her gut told her otherwise. "Grandma," she whispered to me one evening, I think he's hiding something." Her voice was shaky, almost frightened. I could see the weight of sleepless nights in the dark circles under her eyes. I nodded slowly, because sometimes all you can do is acknowledge the fear and wait. It started with the phone. Mark's phone, which he always kept in his pocket, suddenly had a passcode now. He'd step out of the room whenever it buzzed, laugh too loudly at text messages that weren't meant for Claire. She tried to dismiss it at first, telling herself, it's nothing. Maybe it's work. But deep down, she knew better. One rainy Thursday, when the house felt colder than usual, Claire found herself home early. Mark was working late, he had said, and Sophie was at a friend's. The house was quiet, almost eerily so, except for the faint buzz of a phone vibrating on the kitchen counter. It wasn't Mark's phone, no, this was his tablet, left carelessly unlocked. Curiosity got the better of her. I've always told her, Curiosity can be dangerous, Claire, but sometimes it's the only thing that saves you. And so she looked. The first message she read made her stomach drop. Can't wait to see you tonight alone. And then another. Last night was amazing. You have no idea how much I need you. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced. She felt as if the world had shifted beneath her feet. Mark, the man she had trusted, the man she had built a life with, was cheating. With someone she didn't know, someone she couldn't even imagine. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just sat there, paralyzed, staring at the words on the screen. Every betrayal she had feared, every quiet suspicion she had tried to ignore, now had a face, a voice, a proof she could hold in her trembling hands. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartbreak. Claire confronted him once, standing in the middle of their living room, hands shaking, tears streaking her cheeks. "Mark, who is she?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark froze, then tried to laugh it off. "Claire, it's not what you think." It's exactly what I think, Mark," she snapped, the fury finally breaking through. "I trusted you. I gave you everything." He tried to apologize, to explain, but the words sounded hollow. And that's when Claire realized something every betrayed person eventually sees. It wasn't about what he did. It was about how long he had been able to deceive her, how deeply he had buried his lies into the life they shared. One evening, desperate for answers, Claire decided to investigate further. She followed him discreetly one night, hiding in the shadows like a ghost herself. He drove to a small, dimly lit cafe on the other side of town. Claire watched as he met a woman there, their laughter soft but intimate. The way he smiled at her. Oh, my dear, the way he looked at her. It was the same way he used to look at Claire. And that's when it hit her like a blow to the chest. He was capable of loving someone else the way he had promised to love her. But life isn't kind enough to let betrayal be simple. Oh no, not in Claire's story. That woman, she wasn't just some fling. She was someone Claire had known, someone in her own circle, someone who had smiled at her at parties and pretended to be a friend. The shock, the anger, the betrayal, it all collided in Claire's chest at once. When she returned home that night, the house felt smaller, tighter, almost suffocating. Sophie was asleep, unaware of the storm raging in her mother's heart. Claire sat in the dark, replaying every moment, every missed warning, every laugh that now seemed like mockery. I remember her calling me that night, my dear. "Grandma, I don't know what to do. I feel destroyed." And I told her as gently as I could, "Claire, the world may have betrayed you, but you are stronger than you realize. And sometimes the only way to survive is to take that pain and turn it into something powerful." She didn't understand then, not fully. But the seed was planted. That night marked the beginning of something that would change everything. Something that would make Mark and everyone who doubted her pay in ways they could never imagine. Betrayal, my dear, is a terrible thing. It burns like fire, leaving ashes where your trust once was. But it also has a strange power. It can awaken a strength you never knew existed. And that's exactly what it did for Claire. Little did Mark know, the woman he betrayed, the mother of his child, the girl who had once adored him without question. She was just beginning to awaken. Ah, my dear, this is where things get truly dark. After a betrayal like that, Claire didn't just feel pain. She felt hollowed out, like someone had carved a piece of her soul and left her bleeding quietly in the shadows. For days, she wandered through the house like a ghost, her mind replaying every lie, every deceitful smile, every whispered promise that now seemed like mockery. She stopped laughing. She stopped eating properly. Even Sophie noticed, though she didn't know why her mother's eyes seemed haunted. "Mom, are you okay?" the girl asked one morning, her voice tinged with worry. Claire forced a smile, hiding the storm inside. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just tired." But I knew, and deep down, so did she, that the storm was only growing stronger. Claire's nights were the worst. She would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining every possible way the betrayal could have gone unnoticed for so long. How had Mark managed to weave such lies into their lives? How had she, who had trusted him with her heart, allowed herself to be blind for so many years? The questions tore at her like knives. One evening, after weeks of sleepless nights, Claire sat by the window with a notebook she hadn't touched in years. Writing had always been her sanctuary, her escape from the chaos of life. She picked up a pen and let the ink flow, letting her anger, hurt, and confusion spill onto the pages. And as she wrote, a new feeling emerged: clarity. That clarity brought with it a dangerous companion: determination. "Grandma," she said one day as she sat across from me, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea, "I can't just let this go. I can't pretend it didn't happen. I need him to understand the pain he caused." I looked at her, my heart heavy. "Claire, revenge is a powerful fire. Once you light it, it's hard to control." "I know," she whispered, "but I can't stop thinking about it. And I don't want to be the victim anymore." And that, my dear, is when the planning began. It didn't happen overnight. Oh no, Claire was smart. She was methodical. She watched Mark carefully, noting his habits, his weaknesses, the people he trusted blindly. She learned about the woman he had been seeing, her routines, her social circle, the ways she flaunted their secret as if the world owed her nothing but envy. Claire started small, gathering information quietly, making notes in that same notebook she had used to pour her pain. She discovered emails, texts, financial records, little things that, when put together, painted a picture of deceit more complete than she had imagined. And every discovery, every tiny secret, fueled her resolve. But revenge isn't just about anger. It's about timing, my dear. Claire knew that. She had to wait, to choose the perfect moments, the precise ways to strike, so that her actions would be unforgettable, shocking, and undeniable. At the same time, she struggled with herself. Every night, she wrestled with guilt. Was she becoming like the people she despised? Could she really live with the consequences of what she was planning? Her mind oscillated between fury and fear, passion and doubt. "Grandma, do you think I'll lose myself in this?" she asked me once, eyes glistening with tears. "You might, child," I said gently. "But sometimes to survive, to reclaim what's yours, you have to face the darkness inside. Just promise me you won't let it destroy the person you are at the core." Claire nodded, though I could see the steel forming in her heart. The pain had sharpened her mind, focused her intentions. She began imagining scenarios, writing them down, testing them in her notebook as if she were playing chess with fate itself. She thought about embarrassment, exposure, consequences that would make Mark and his mistress rethink every choice they had made. She imagined moments that would turn their world upside down, leaving them shocked, humiliated, and finally aware of the damage they had done. And my dear, here's the thing about a person who has been betrayed like Claire. When the right moment comes, when the plan is set, there is no hesitation. Every tear she had cried, every sleepless night, every pang of loneliness, they all fueled a precision in her mind, a strategy that was almost terrifying in its clarity. Claire didn't just want revenge, she wanted justice. She wanted Mark to see, in ways he couldn't ignore, the pain he had caused. She wanted him to feel the betrayal, the emptiness, and the shock that she had endured. And she wanted it done in a way that would leave no doubt, no room for excuses. As she plotted, she kept up appearances. To Sophie, she was still a mother, caring and present. To Mark, she remained the wife he underestimated, the one he thought he could manipulate and ignore. But behind closed doors, Claire transformed. She became a strategist, a silent storm gathering strength and focus. Now listen carefully, my dear, because this is where Claire's story explodes, where all the planning, all the sleepless nights, all the quiet fury culminates into action. And action, when fueled by betrayal, is not gentle. It is precise. It is shocking. It is unforgettable. Claire began with small, almost imperceptible moves. She didn't want to rush and ruin everything. First, she gathered evidence. Not just emails and messages, but videos, photos, and bank statements that Mark thought no one would ever see. She documented everything meticulously, creating a digital map of deceit. Every lie he had told, every secret he had tried to bury, it was all there, waiting for the perfect moment. Then she turned her attention to his mistress. Ah, that woman, so confident, so smug, thinking she had won. Claire started subtly undermining her. Anonymous messages, small humiliations, glimpses of truth she couldn't ignore. A missed appointment here, a leaked secret there. Claire wasn't cruel without cause, she was surgical. Every move was calculated to reveal the truth without implicating herself too early. But the real fun, my dear, came when she confronted Mark. Oh yes, she didn't rush him into it. She let him believe he was still untouchable, that she was broken, defeated. He strutted around the house like a king in his own castle, unaware that the queen he had betrayed was planning his downfall with meticulous care. The first confrontation was quiet, almost domestic. Claire invited him to dinner, a simple evening, just the two of them. She served his favorite meal, smiled at him, and kept her tone gentle. "Mark," she said softly, "we need to talk." He raised an eyebrow, thinking this was the usual nagging. But then, with a calm that belied the storm in her chest, Claire presented the first piece of evidence. A text message from his mistress, time-stamped, incriminating. His face went pale. "Claire, I can explain," he stammered. She shook her head. "Explain? I already know everything. I've watched, I've waited, I've planned. And now, it's time you understand what it feels like to be powerless." The next phase was more public. Claire knew that Mark thrived on appearances, on respect, on the illusion that he was untouchable. So she carefully leaked parts of the evidence to his colleagues, anonymously, of course, enough to sow doubt, enough to make him squirm in the corridors he once walked proudly. Every meeting, every handshake, every smile he tried to maintain now carried a shadow of suspicion. Meanwhile, she orchestrated encounters with his mistress that were utterly humiliating. A misplaced email here, a surprise visitor there. Small events that gradually dismantled the woman's confidence, exposing her to friends and colleagues in ways she could never have predicted. The psychological precision of Claire's plan was astounding, even to me, watching from the sidelines. But my dear, the piece de resistance came when Claire decided to confront Mark at the company gala. The perfect stage, with all the people who mattered, all the faces that had once admired him. She appeared like nothing had changed, radiant and calm, the picture of composure. He saw her, smiled, and for a fleeting moment, believed she still trusted him. Then Claire executed the final move. A slideshow, set to play during the evening, appeared on the big screen. Emails, photos, bank transfers, even audio messages that left the room in stunned silence. Every secret he had thought was hidden was laid bare. Colleagues gasped. Friends murmured. And Mark, well, he was frozen, humiliated in front of everyone he had tried to impress for years. Sophie, who had been quietly watching, finally saw her mother not as someone defeated, but as someone unstoppable, someone who had taken back control of her life. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Mom, you're incredible." Mark tried to speak, to explain, to apologize, but the room had already decided. His power was gone. And that's when Claire showed mercy, but in her own way. She didn't attack physically. She didn't destroy him financially. No, my dear, she let his own shame consume him. She walked away from the stage, leaving him with the consequences of his actions, watching as he faced the judgment of the world he had once controlled. But that wasn't all. Claire's revenge extended to the mistress as well. A carefully timed revelation to her social circle, coupled with the subtle exposure of her deception, left her reputation in tatters. People whispered, friends distanced themselves, and she finally realized the cost of underestimating the woman she had mocked. Throughout all this, Claire kept her dignity. She didn't shout, she didn't rage. Every action was measured, every move calculated, every moment intentional. That, my dear, is the terrifying beauty of revenge. It's not about anger. It's about justice, precision, and timing. And even as the dust settled, Claire didn't gloat. She had reclaimed her power, her life, and her dignity. Mark and the woman he had chosen were left to reckon with the consequences of their choices, while Claire emerged stronger than ever. She had learned that betrayal could be devastating, but it could also be transformative. That, my dear, is how a heartbroken woman became unstoppable. That is how Claire turned her pain into a force that no one could ignore. And that, my sweet one, is why you must never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who has been wronged. They may seem broken, but inside they are plotting, planning, and preparing a storm that can change everything. Ah, my dear, now comes the part that often surprises people. After all the plotting, all the meticulous plans, all the dramatic reveals, life continues. And it is in this continuation that lessons are learned, hearts are tested, and karma finds its quiet way. Claire didn't need to follow Mark or the woman around forever. She didn't need to punish them physically or publicly. No, she had done what she set out to do, reclaim her life, her dignity, and her peace of mind. Mark, once proud and smug, became a cautionary tale among his colleagues. His mistress learned that arrogance and secrecy are dangerous companions, and the world is far less forgiving than she imagined. But the most important change was within Claire herself. She had discovered something she had almost forgotten, her own strength. Betrayal had hurt her deeply, yes, but it had also awakened a side of her she didn't know existed. She had turned her pain into precision, her anger into strategy, her heartbreak into a path toward justice. Sophie noticed it too. She began to see her mother not just as someone who had been wronged, but as someone capable of rising above adversity in ways most people only dream of. And in that realization, the bond between mother and daughter grew stronger. Claire had not only avenged herself, she had also modeled resilience, courage, and intelligence for her child. Claire returned to her passions as well. Remember the notebook she had once used to pour out her pain? It became a journal of her victories, her growth, and her reflections. She started writing again, not out of sadness, but out of strength. Poetry, stories, even essays about her experiences. Her words began to inspire others who had been hurt, silenced, or betrayed. And so, my dear, the moral of this story emerges. Life will betray you. People you trust may deceive you, and heartbreak may strike when you least expect it. But you, yes, you have a choice. You can let the pain consume you, or you can let it transform you. You can rise from the ashes stronger, wiser, and more unstoppable than you ever imagined. Claire's revenge wasn't about cruelty. It was about justice. It wasn't about winning over others. It was about reclaiming herself. And in that, she found something far more powerful than any act of retribution: freedom. So remember this, my dear. Never underestimate the quiet strength of someone who has been wronged. And also remember, karma is patient. It doesn't always arrive in the form we expect, but it always arrives. And when it does, it will remind you that life has a way of balancing the scales in ways that are shocking, inevitable, and unforgettable. Claire's story is a testament to that truth. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, revenge, and ultimate triumph. A story that teaches us that even in our darkest moments, we can find light, if we have the courage to see it, the patience to plan, and the strength to act. And now, my dear, you must remember it too. Hold it close, because life will test you, in ways both cruel and subtle. But like Claire, you can emerge stronger than anyone ever imagined.
Come sit by me, sugar. Let me tell you a story, a long one, full of joy, heartbreak, and mistakes that haunt a person long after they're gone. I want you to listen close, not just with your ears but with your heart. It's a story about a mother's love, blind trust, and the silence that comes with losing someone not to death at first, but to betrayal. I'm Evelyn Carter, and this is my story. I was born in a small town in Tennessee, where the streets weren't paved and everybody knew each other's business. My mother taught me to bake biscuits before I could write my own name, and my daddy taught me how to fix a leaky roof by handing me a hammer and saying, "Don't be scared." I grew up simple, humble, and hard-working. I married young, like most girls back then, and built a life full of promise, with dreams bigger than the fields we tilled. My husband, Samuel, was a hard man. Not cruel, but hardened. Life wasn't easy for him either. His father was strict, his job at the mill barely paid, and dreams seemed to shrink before they even started. But he loved me in his own quiet way. We built a little home with our hands, planted apple trees, raised chickens, and every evening, after long days, we sat on the porch watching the sunset, counting our blessings. And then came Michael. Michael was born one stormy night in early spring. I remember holding him close while thunder rolled over the hills. He had tiny fingers that clutched my own as if he knew even then that life could be uncertain. I whispered into his ear that I'd always be there, no matter what. I promised him everything: food when he was hungry, warmth when he was cold, and love without question. Raising him wasn't easy. There were nights I stayed up crying softly because we couldn't afford milk, or days when the only thing on the table was cornbread and syrup. But I never let him see the worry in my eyes. I'd fix my hair, smile, and tell him, "We're all right, baby. We're gonna be just fine." Michael grew up with a restless spirit. He had dreams bigger than our small town, wanted to leave for the city, find better work, and live a life with shiny cars and fancy restaurants. I didn't mind. I wanted him to go far, to have everything I never had. I sold my gold watch when he needed tuition for college. I skipped doctor visits so he could have new clothes. I gave him my wedding ring one Christmas when he said his friends laughed at him for not having anything worth showing off. I barely noticed my own needs anymore. His happiness was my purpose. He left for Atlanta after high school with promises to write every week, to call, to visit during holidays. For a while, he did. His letters were full of excitement. New friends, new jobs, new opportunities. I kept each letter in a tin box beneath my bed, reading them like scripture before sleeping. But slowly, the calls became fewer, the letters shorter, and the visits rare. I told myself life gets busy. I kept baking his favorite pecan pies for when he'd show up. When he married, he invited us, me and Samuel, to the wedding. I wore the only pearl necklace I owned. But even then, I could feel the distance in his eyes. His new wife, Vanessa, was polished, confident, and from a world far from ours. I felt like I was standing in the doorway of someone else's life, smiling while the door slowly closed behind me. After the wedding, things started to change. Calls became non-existent. I'd wait by the phone until the battery died. Holidays came and went, and I'd light a candle for him and pretend he was here. I wrote letters I never sent, pages filled with blessings, advice, and love. Samuel grew quiet too, retreating into his chair, chain-smoking, and letting silence swallow him whole. The day everything fell apart, I still remember it like yesterday. Vanessa came to town with Michael. I thought maybe this time would be different. I cleaned the house top to bottom, cooked his favorite fried chicken, and set out fresh flowers by the window. But by evening, things had changed. Words were sharp, faces tight. After dinner, Michael pulled me aside, his eyes watery but distant. "Mom, it's time," he whispered. "I'm sorry." "I don't understand, baby," I said, heart sinking. "What do you mean it's time?" He couldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa stepped in. "Mom," she said carefully, we need space. We have plans. We're building our life. It's better if you're somewhere you'll be taken care of." Her words were sugar-coated poison. I felt the ground slip from under me. Samuel, bless him, tried to speak but could barely hold it together. The next week, they arranged for me to move to a facility, an assisted living home miles away. I hugged Michael one last time at the door. He didn't hug me back. "Take care, Mom," he murmured. His eyes avoided mine like I was already gone. I drove away with a small suitcase. I remember turning to look at the house one last time, the porch light flickering behind the screen door. My heart tore into pieces. The first months at the facility were hard. New faces, cold walls, pills, and loneliness. But I never stopped loving Michael. I wrote letters I never sent. I told him about the sunrise, about how I learned to garden again, how I missed the smell of rain on fresh-cut grass. I prayed for his happiness every night, even when it hurt. And I lived. This is where the story really begins, child. Because love is patient, but hearts can only take so much before they begin to crumble. Wait till I tell you what happened next. The lies, the betrayal, and how the heart of a mother, even in pain, holds on too tight. But for tonight, this is enough. Let it sink in. Tomorrow, I'll tell you how I found out he wasn't the boy I raised, and how my world came crashing down.